cross, you bled and died. Mm. Ah. You paid it all upon the cross. You bled and died 'cause I was lost. So here I am, surrendering my all. Lord, hear my cry. On my knees I fall. 'Cause you paid it. You paid it. You paid it. Lord, I wanna thank you. Yeah, you paid it. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. You canceled my past. Yeah, I wanna say thank you. You paid it. Threw it into the sea. You paid it all.
When peace like a river tendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, yeah. Whatever my life thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. Though Satan should buffet, though trials should come, let this blessed assurance control that Christ has regarded my helpless state and has shed his own blood for my soul. I know it is well with my soul, yeah. You told me, Lord, me to say it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul.
Connecting the community through gospel. The new 107.9 FM, W300EB, Macon, and WDDO 980 AM, Perry, Macon.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of the Glory 980 AM, the Glory Media Group, LLC, WDDO AM, its staff, management, or advertisers, but are the views and opinions of the participants of the broadcast.
It is now time for the live broadcast of the NAACP with Gwinnett, Westbrook, and Mr. Dumas.
And good evening, and welcome to another segment of the NAACP Truth Show. I'm Willie Dumas, your host, and also joining us today is President Westbrooks. And we have a show that we hope you will enjoy today. Our special guest that was supposed to be joining us today turned ill, and so she won't be able to be here. She was going to talk to us about Medicaid expansion, but I did want to mention some things in regards to that. It is noted that over 545,000 families could lose their Medicaid and Peach Care, and this is considered a crisis, of course. And so she was going to come on the show and talk about what you can do as a recipient. One of the things that it talks about here, it says too many Black people are dying because they can't afford to go to the doctor, um, buy their medicine, or they simply do not make enough to pay for health insurance. And so we want to make sure that you check your family's eligibility for Medicaid and Peach Care benefits. Also, you want to confirm your contact information by logging into gateway.ga.gov. So if you got a pen or a pencil, I'll give you time to grab that. And you may want to jot this gateway login information. Once again, that your contact information by logging into gateway.ga.gov. Also, it says you want to sign up to get help filling out your Medicaid paperwork, and they have assistance with that as well. And so, um, a very important piece of information, particularly as it relates to those who receive Medicaid coverage and Peach Care. So you want to make sure you're yet qualified, and by checking on that. A lot of hot weather out there. I think when I was headed here, my thermometer was reading 97 degrees, and according to the weather this morning, the heat index would be in triple digits today. And you can certainly feel that if you've been outside. And so you certainly want to hydrate yourself. And if you don't have to be outside, you shouldn't be outside. I mean, it's really, really warm out there. I know this weekend I was experiencing those extreme temperatures on Saturday. I believe the temperature Saturday is pretty much the same as today, triple digits. So want to make sure we stay safe out here in this heat and in this hot weather. On last week, the NAACP, along with myself and President Westbrooks and the other members, we were over at the Hidden Lakes Apartments. You may have seen that coverage covered on the on your local television station. And of course, there's been some issues there dealing with the water and the cost that they've incurred upon the residents that live there. And of course, we were looking into that. And in doing so, we also held a meeting later this past week where the residents had an opportunity to bring their bills, and we could go over those and kind of see, exactly what was going on with that. President Westbrooks, good evening to you.
Everyone. Hello.
I was just speaking to our audience about the ongoing issue we're dealing with at Hidden Lakes Apartments, and even some other apartments as well across the city.
And so this is not just Bibb County. I mean, it's just not Hidden Lakes. It's a lot of other apartments that complexes that have these hidden fees. And the thing about it is that you got to pay very close to your attention to your lease that you're signing.
Absolutely.
Because at one time the water was included in Hidden Lakes rent, but now it's changed. They have all these different fees with the water and sewage. They have pest control, a monthly pest control fee, a monthly garbage fee. Now they have, I see on some bills they have stormwater. So we're going to be meeting probably with our county leaders to kind of address these issues. The thing about just like pest control, they're charging people a $10 fee pest control. So just imagine if you have 100 units,
right?
So you're collecting $1,000 a month, but they're not getting pest control service every month.
Exactly.
So
and with some of the complaints, of course, with rodents and other insects that they've complained about, we certainly know it's not effective if they are doing it. Hadn't been effective.
And so the thing about it is that these people didn't have individual water meters, so we're trying to figure out how are they determining that these people owe the amount that they say they owe, and they have filed like 40 evictions. And a lot of people was under the impression, by me looking at the news media, they were under the impression that they were being evicted because of their rent.
Right.
But it wasn't because of the rent. But what happens is all of these fees have to be paid at the same time you pay your rent. So if you don't do that, then it's considered like it's late and not being paid. So, uh, Mr. Dumas, in all actuality, because of COVID and because landlords lost so much money because of not being able to collect rent, they're basically doing things to try to get their money back. But at the same time, you cannot. What you got to look at is what we got to look at is, and I don't know how we're going to get this information unless we ask for an investigation to be done by the fair housing uh, and in the uh, inspector general,
Right.
because if you have a if this particular apartment complex water usage and they bill them $1,000 a month, and then the tenants are paying a total of $2,000 a month, then they're being overcharged.
Absolutely.
So this is what we have to look at, because you're talking about people that have one bedroom, don't have or that don't have a washer, and then you got a $200 water bill. That's a lot.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
mean,
I have a washer, I have you know, all of this, and my water bill is like
never, not even close to
not
that.
even close to that. So, yeah, we're going to be in this. Like I say, if you are in this situation and you have concerns, you can contact our office at 478-745-9944, because it's not just this apartment complexes. I've had some other apartment complexes contact us also relating to these same type of charges, because they're actually managed by the same management company.
Right.
And so I do know that at one apartment complex, they just started enforcing them to pay separate water, but theirs is set like $35 for one bedroom, 45 for two bedrooms, 55 for three bedrooms. And so even still with that, we still don't know whether or not that's correct, because somebody could have three bedrooms and still don't use
Right.
use
That much water.
$55 of
Right.
water, because I got a whole house, and my water bill is uh, runs about that, so $50, so something like that. So anyway, we just got to make sure that we pay close attention to our leases that we're signing, because they're making, and then we got to look at something else that we looked at also when we had the meeting the other day. There was quite a bit people showed up from there,
Absolutely.
and so, but we're encouraging anybody not to go into court without legal representation. You need to see about getting the housing. I mean, getting with Georgia Legal Services. They don't take everything, but we got to get some. We're hoping that we can get some attorneys to come on board with the NAACP and take some of these cases as pro bono, because we have so many cases like this here in Bibb County, and if you don't have the right judge
Right.
in front of you, then a lot of people will be evicted that shouldn't be evicted. You got to listen. I'm saying, when you're in a position as a judge, you have to listen to the both sides, and you got to listen at the information that they give you and look at the evidence that
Right.
they're giving you. And so we've just been getting a lot of complaints from tenants that that's not what's happening. And so we don't want anybody to do anything to break the law, but we want them to be fair, and we want them to give both parties the opportunity to present their case.
Absolutely. And then when you look at um, the month to month type lease,
Yeah,
operates a little differently than,
right. And that's another thing. Like Mr. Dillon said, you got to be careful with that, because on your lease, it gives you a monthly amount, and then it gives you an extra $250 month to month. But you got to figure out which one you signing. Are you signing a lease for a year, or you're signing a lease for month to month? And see, I'm finding out that tenants are being signed on being leases being renewed on a month to month basis, which is an extra $250, and you don't know that because you think that you're signing a year lease.
right.
And so they're charging this extra $250 because you're signing a month to month lease.
and
Um,
and they have to be, they got to be more conscious of actually what they're signing. And one of the issues we also ran across is a lot of our elderly tenants don't have access to computers or, and those kinds of things. It makes it difficult many times for them
mhm.
to first of all understand their lease, and second of all to even make payment. on their rent, and so they have to have assistance with either a family member or someone like that. And so, our heart goes out to people that are elderly and not so computer savvy, and having to deal with
Mm-hmm.
leases and
Mm-hmm.
paying their rent, because we were told that if they were late
One day.
one day, a
It's two
$200
hundred
fine.
dollar late fee. So
Yeah.
that's another thing. Just I was sorry. I was thinking that because of COVID, that people in our legislature would think that most people are going to try to get their money back and by price gouging. And so, unfortunately, Georgia does not have a anything in place to say that a landlord cannot increase
The rent
the
by a
rent
certain
certain amount,
increments.
but it should be in your lease. That's why you got to pay close attention to your lease.
Right.
And so, um, I'm seeing where tenants that are paying $500 and maybe $50, their rent has went up to almost $700, and but you got to question it because they're not supposed to do that.
Right.
That's too much of an increase. And then also I was reading where the late fee is like 5% of your rent amount, which is maybe about $50 or $60, but they charging people too, and that's another $200 for being a late 1 day late. So those are the type of things have to be challenged, and we gotta, even though the governor has not put anything in place, we can meet with our uh, mayor and commissioners, and they may can do an audience and put something uh, in place
Right.
to stop these landlords from. A lot of these landlords and owners are not don't even live in Macon, and so it's happening here in our county, and they're from out of county, and they're charging these people all these tenants all these different fees, which is ridiculous. $200 late fee for being 1 day late is ridiculous.
Absolutely. And then um,
Somebody with $800 rent, that's a fourth of their
r-
yeah.
right. And then too, locally, the managers that are managing these properties, their hands are sort of tied because of the policies that they have to operate under from those companies that own these apartment
Right.
buildings.
And
So,
so basically, the property manager is there, but the management company that
right,
the owner has to actually manage the finance part, those are the people that are coming up with all these different fees and different things, and the owner's just letting them do it because it's making them money. But at the same time, we got to put a stop to it. It's so many of them like this, and people don't realize that in Bibb County, you barely can afford to even uh, barely can afford to even live.
right. It's
And
it's tough times.
hmm and so you know, trying to find houses, people with Section 8 vouchers, you, you know, either HUD, it's gonna have to try to, you know, I don't know if they're not looking at the fair market value. I don't know, but you got to raise the vouchers to the fair market value of what it's cost to be able to rent an apartment or a house.
Right. And one of the other things too, which they have to be fair about is making certain repairs. When tenants request repairs, and they're saying, particularly at Hidden Lakes, they were saying that the maintenance, they don't have a lot of maintenance workers to get around to the work. But if a person's got to pay us increase on their monthly, they should be getting the services they need,
Well,
for those apartments.
and the thing about this, that's a lot of the owners don't invest in their property.
Right.
They're basically renting these apartments and not fixing them, and then the tenants are left there. And some of the reasons is because they can't either keep somebody there in maintenance, or the maintenance person is having to do repairs for 4 or 5 apartment complexes, and I see that's some of the problems. And but the owners are not invested in their properties. They just collect the rent, and then they don't want to fix anything. So I'm glad that code enforcement is on the job. They've been
Absolutely.
doing a lot of things. So um, I know that we getting ready to talk about it last week about Green Meadows, where the county sued. They have a receiver now that actually kind of oversees what Green Meadows do, and they really can't do anything unless they go through the receiver. And so we've been working with the tenants out there. They actually contacted the NAACP last year, and so HUD kind of got involved, and I was thinking that things were resolved, and then I'm finding out that it's not resolved. And so we got back involved again because there was a lot of issues dealing with um, the tenants being threatened and by um, management and security and different things like that. So um, people should the tenants got to do right also. They got to do
Absolutely.
right also, but people shouldn't have to live in fear and being intimidated. And they had don't set a curfew, and they tried to say that the sheriff had set this curfew that people had to be in the house a certain time of night, and so
Wow.
they're saying that it's dangerous out there, and they're looking at the number of 911 calls on the property there, which is true. But at the same time, um, if Sheriff David would have set a curfew, he would have set for the whole Bibb County, not just Green Meadows.
Wow.
And so, like I say, that was not true. I've spoken to Sheriff Davis about that, and that's not true. But um, some of the same issues that you have just about everywhere, they're not doing repairs. We dealt with Green Meadows long years ago, back in 2009, and the same issues that we have now, we had back in 2009, where they're not the really, in my honest opinion, they're gonna have to tear those things down to the ground and then rebuild them. They call themselves remodeling them, but I've been in those apartments since they remodeled. They falling apart
Wow.
even after they remodeled them, and they had tenants actually living on the property while they were actually doing construction and all this stuff, and it was crazy because we had gotten involved where they were moving people off the property, putting them in hotels, but then they wasn't properly doing it because they had like one guy, his 5 kids in one hotel room, and they contacted me, and I went out and looked at his hotel room, and called them back and said, look, he need two rooms because somebody was sleeping on the floor and everybody was not sleeping in the bed, and so we need 2 rooms, and we don't need one down the hall or one. We need 2 adjoining
Right.
bedrooms because these are minor children where he can just walk out one room and go into the other. So we were able to get that fixed. But like I said, we've been dealing with Green Meadows for a very long time. Things seems to get a little better, and um, then something else happened. And a lot of times it has to do with management. Like I said, the tenants have to do their part. People need to be able to feel safe where they're living at, and I understand the county's position in doing what they uh, did, but you know the uh, the regional management, she and I had started working together to try to get issues resolved. We started communicating like the 27th of July, and she immediately came in and started making changes. Unfortunately, this was already in progress. Um, they were in the process of you know, taking over and filing a lawsuit evidently. So, because it came out of nowhere. So, it was already in the process of
Right.
um, being done. And she just didn't have the opportunity to show what she was willing to do to make a change. And so hopefully they'll be able to work together to get, I do know there's been some people relieved of their duties there since she's been there. Um, and like I said, a lot of the issues sometimes is management.
Absolutely.
We just, we know a young lady got killed out there earlier this year. And so our heart, we're keeping her family. She has a daughter, keeping her daughter in prayers. But people should be able to live in a safe environment. And we've been dealing with another apartment complex that the same owners own, Sandy Spring. We've been having to deal with some issues over there with them finding the tenants for having a grill, so we don't grilling out. So,
Wow.
people just need to look at their lease to see whether they can grill out or not. What your
Right.
lease says, or I think they can grill out, but they just have to be a certain distance
Distance
from
from the property.
right. But because the landlord could not find out who was actually grilling, she fined everybody that was in in
Certain proximity. Wow.
right. And so you can't do that. If you got cameras, they don't work. You need to get them fixed so you can determine who did what, and you don't have to put innocent people.
Right.
You
Punish
know,
them along with
basically
it.
because evictions are being filed because people have not paid the $50 fine, and some people are like, are paying it because they don't want to get evicted. But if you can't determine who it is, then you shouldn't be punishing
Finding those people.
everybody.
Right.
And so you got cameras, get them fixed. Then you
Uh,
can determine, you will know who's doing what.
absolutely.
And so you can't. It's not fair for people to pay a fine because I'm if I wasn't grilling, then I don't want to pay a $50 fine just because you can't determine who, who it was.
Absolutely. With all the other fees that they
Yeah,
sometimes tag on, you know,
but
that's
we this housing stuff is so serious because
absolutely
people are actually being evicted, and you know I sat in last week before last on a case, and I was a witness, but this tenant actually got evicted, and I'm not I don't understand how, but really I think an investigation needs to be done into this magistrate court. Something has to happen. We getting too many complaints, and these complaints are not just to us; they're to other community leaders about magistrate court. And so people may not think that it's serious, but when somebody lose their home
it's a
and
serious thing.
lose their place of living, then it's serious because you become homeless. You got to live with someone else that wasn't prepared for somebody to be moving in with them. It disrupt your whole life, especially if you got kids in school. So you know what we got to look at is every time someone go before the judge dealing with housing, that doesn't mean that the tenant is always wrong. That means that the tenant is always right, but the tenant shouldn't always be wrong.
Right.
And so that's what we're seeing.
Right. And a lot of tenants, particularly when they're evicted, you know, whether it's warranted or not, a lot of times their belongings are damaged due to rain and inclement
But
weather.
people
And
steal, especially.
right.
I remember a young lady that was evicted, and we were there trying to help get her belongings up because people will steal your stuff if they just sit it out like that. A lot of them, they don't give you no warning when they come
Right.
in. They tell you that approximately how many days it's gonna be, but then they do that so you can go ahead on and start moving. But if you wait and not do anything, and when that date comes, they sit your stuff out, then people will actually steal your stuff if you're not there to get it. So it's just unfortunate. We want to make sure that people are evicted uh, that haven't done what they're supposed to do, but we
Right.
don't want people evicted because they're not allowed to be heard when they go to court.
Right. And that's, you know, because while we were there at Hidden Lakes, I kind of drove around and just saw, you know, things out on the sidewalk in a lot of different apartments. And I was like, wow.
And some people are just moving because you know they either been threatened with eviction and they don't want that on their record once they go to eviction. And see, that's another thing. Landlords are sending out eviction letters and people are just moving, but um,
That goes on that
legally they
record.
can't evict you. You got to go through the courts, but when it go through the courts, it's actually on your record. You take a chance. A lot of people know the situation. The word has gotten around. If you go to court, you're gonna be evicted because they're not gonna listen to you, and that's what we gotta change. We gotta
Right.
change the perception of
Going to
what
court is
right, because they feel that they're gonna be evicted because they're not gonna be heard, and they're not gonna be able to present the evidence. So that's a big thing because people have a perception and they're afraid. That's why a lot of times things go on as long as it do because people are afraid to speak up. They're scared that they will lose their apartment if they speak up about anything. So even with repairs, if you voice your opinion or say that something needs fixing and they don't fix it and you come back again and say, well, my stuff is not fixed, they're in fear that they may be evicted because they feel like they're complaining. They're not. They're really not. They just want their stuff
right.
fixed.
Exactly. Particularly now. I mean, person's air nut is not working, and these hot temperatures, of course, you want to get that fixed as quickly as possible.
And we've been seeing a lot of that. We've been seeing a lot of people without air conditioning, and again, we're asking people to check on your neighbors. If you hadn't seen your neighbors in a couple of days, just knock on the door, just check on, make sure, because we are experiencing people in a lot of these apartments that air conditioning has stopped working, and just imagine if you're somewhere where you are not getting there's no air, you
Right.
can get sick and dehydrated and actually pass out. So
Absolutely.
we just want to make sure that you just check on your neighbors. If you hadn't seen them in a couple of days, just knock on the door, check on them, and just make sure that they're okay.
Absolutely. I did want to put a plug in for the expungement clinic that's going to be happening the 26th of this month at LH Williams from 10 to 2. Of course, they Philip Randolph, and I don't know who else they're partnering with. Usually they partner with us. We usually assist and do voters registration and those kind of things during their event. But once again, that's going to be held August 26th from 10 to 2 o'clock at LH Williams. And so those of you who have, misdemeanor tickets and those kind of things on your record, you want to come out and get that dealt with, and just, so you do want to take advantage of that on the 26th.
And then we're going to be getting ready. We're going to go ahead on and tell you about our Freedom Fund banquet.
Absolutely.
And we're going to be having October the 21st. Tickets are $50, and we're going to have a speaker. We're going to be giving out some awards. We're asking for you to support this event. There we do have tables that you can actually purchase. And I'll let Maria, and she's running some errands for me today. But I think the tables are running from maybe $700 to $1,500. You can do $100 ad. We always have good food. So
Absolutely.
we're asking for you to please support the organization, because it takes money for us to be able to do what we do. And like I said, the tickets are $50. We do have, you can cash out the ticket, cash out it to the $, make them be a NAACP, or you can send a check to make them be a NAACP, Post Office Box 6452, Macon, Georgia 31208, and that is going to be October the 21st at 5 o'clock.
Amen. And so we look to see you then. And of course, until next week, have a great day and stay cool.
And also, we got one more minute. Make sure
You have been listening to the live broadcast of the NAACP with Gwinnett Westbrook and Mr. Dumas. Come join us next Monday at 4 o'clock p.m. on 980 WDDO.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of the Glory 980 AM, the Glory Media Group, LLC, WDDO AM, its staff, management, or advertisers, but are the views and opinions of the participants